So we're back with the study past the Psalms and back to First Chronicles. And today I'm sharing lessons from First Chronicles 13 to 16. So remember that the ark had been captured and then returned by the Philistines. Back then, remember that story. And then that was during the reign of Saul. And so the ark was now returned to Kirjath Jearim. And the ark stayed there for about 20 years. And now David is in power, and along with the people, have decided to bring the ark back to Jerusalem. And this was David's first royal act, to bring back the ark as a physical reminder of God's presence, his sovereignty, and his faithfulness to his people. Bringing back the ark didn't go so well, from what we read. And Uzzah, one of the guides, who was the son of Abinadab, whose house the ark had been in, was struck down for touching the ark. In chapter 14, we see that it's just a repeat of 2 Samuel 5, where God gave David victory over the Philistines. And it also let us know David's family tree, like how many sons and daughters and all that he had, which we basically have heard before. David, after constructing his house and building a tent for the ark, he commanded that it be brought back to Jerusalem. This time, he did it right. He instructed the Levites to consecrate themselves and bring up the ark in the proper order. Now, just like the Philistines had done and put the ark on a cart, the same mistake was made earlier, for which Uzzah paid dearly with his life. If you remember, the ark is not meant to be put on carts. God was very specific when he gave the instructions to Moses and the Levites back then that it always had to be held on poles on the shoulders of the Levites, right? This time, the ark was transported correctly by the priests on the poles in their shoulders and in the right formation, and everyone dressed accordingly, and sacrifices were made as the ark moved. Remember Michal, Saul's daughter, David's estranged and then restored wife. She was the only one who didn't participate in the festivities, and instead she despised David. More on this to come. After the ark was placed in the tent and the appropriate burnt offerings and fellowship offerings were made, David blessed and fed the people. And after appointing the Levites to minister before the ark, David gave a song of thanksgiving and praise. The song has some familiar parts, as it contains some of the words and phrases that we've seen in some of the psalms that we've covered so far. So it makes me believe that there's sort of a pattern or some familiar words that David used when he praised God, and that's actually quite comforting, I think. And here's my hashtag getting to know God lesson. Without seeking God for direction and obeying his commands, we'll definitely miss the mark every time. Uzzah acted instinctively and reacted and reached out to steady the ark, and it cost him his life. God's commandment was very clear. And he was most likely not a Levite, and that's Uzzah, right? He was most likely not a Levite, and he was doing that. David acted with good intention by bringing the ark back to the Israelites in Jerusalem, but he didn't follow God's command for the transportation of the ark the first time. Proverbs 14:12 says, "There's a way that seems right to a man, but the end is the way of death." God has given us all we need to live a life that pleases him. We just need to read and obey his words and listen to the promptings of the Holy Spirit for the things that aren't explicitly covered in the Bible. And once we do that, we can be sure that we will never miss the mark. Thank you for joining me today. Tomorrow we'll be back to the Psalms, and we'll be covering Psalm 1 to 2, 15, 22 to 24, 47 and 68. Long reads, come prepared. Have a good day.